hunt the bark and hare, oh, Hallanto, jolly rumble, oh, we were up long before the day, oh, to welcome in the summertime, welcome in the May, oh, for summer is a-coming in, and winter's gone away. What happened to the Spaniard? The mates are brave, the boast, oh, that they shall eat the feather goose. We shall eat the roast, oh, Hallanto, jolly rumble, oh, we were up long before the day, oh, to welcome in the summertime, welcome in the May, oh, for summer is a-coming in, and winter's gone away.
Tune in to International Pagan Radio. You can hear your favorite artists such as Dave the Bard, Tuatha Dea, Spiral Rhythm, S.J. Tucker, Murphy's Midnight Rounders, and many, many more. Join us for exciting shows like Ask a Witch and Storytime with Rook as well. www.internationalpaganradio.com on the net or on TuneIn Radio on your mobile devices. Join us on Facebook and Twitter too. International Pagan Radio, all pagan, all the time.
Welcome back to An Emerging Forest on the Spiritual Unity Radio Network. We hope everyone was able to stretch their legs and get a drink. And now, back to Alan.
Well, welcome back, everyone. And I'd like to remind all of our listeners that this is a live broadcast call-in show. And if you would like to call in to be on the show, please dial 646-564-9714. And let's continue on. So,
all right. I had a question.
Where were we?
If I could take it to maybe a divergent path. I would love to know more about your love of experimental music. Maybe you could tell us more about the music that you enjoy and what that's like.
Well, so now, because I'm exposed to so much, mostly at the Rotunda, I love so many different kinds of things. I love, I won't even get into just so many different kinds of genres and music from places that I've never heard of.
I'd love to hear more about it.
I really love throat singing, which is kind of funny because before working at the Rotunda, I had never heard of it. I didn't know what it was. And now we welcome this throat singing group called Alash to the Rotunda every maybe 9 or 10 months. They're from Tuva in Central Asia. And it's just a really special, really cool kind of thing. I mean, it sounds cool, but also once you hear the stories, what the songs are about, and I really like music from just nomadic people and indigenous people from around the world and everything. I've gotten into Bhangra, which some people liken it to Bollywood, like the jumpy kind of energetic music. And I don't understand what anybody is singing, but I just love the music. But with experimental music, I don't know when it started, but at some point I just found that I loved ambient. I loved music concrete, when people just sort of create cool sounds out of just anything, out of machines, out of just typewriters, whatever. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it came from. I love it. At one point, I was into sort of the goth industrial scene in Philly, and I would go to goth nights, and I out of all the music, I loved the industrial music more than anything because they were using, the term for the music comes from the fact that they were recording, at least originally, the sounds of industries, so I can totally zone out even now. If somebody is, I don't know, somebody has a jackhammer down the street or whatever, I can totally zone out to it. It's kind of cool though, because it's meditative for me. I think a lot of it has to do with the absence of lyrics. So you can kind of go wherever you want. But I like music that mimics nature, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I started volunteering with this guy, Aharon Verity, who now lives in Cincinnati, where he's from originally. He created a series at the Rotunda called Gate to Moonbase Alpha, and it was space rock, ambient noise, electronic, all sort of experiments. And I don't remember how we met. Maybe he would. I don't know. But I just started helping out after the Penn students I mentioned earlier kind of found me and a couple of my friends who were putting on just random events in different places. And from that music, I became sort of I just had this appetite for it that, I couldn't satisfy. I was always looking up things online and now years later, we still present that kind of music, and that series, which was always on third Fridays, continues. And now it's not called Gate to Moonbase Alpha, it's called Gate, and it's presented by Bowerbird, who's a local nonprofit who presents, again, experimental things. But yeah, I think something I like about it is the fact that anybody can, if they allow themselves, can enjoy it, and it actually has a lot more in common with other genres than I think people realize. So, for example, a lot of the kind of catchy electronic stuff that one would hear and kind of zone out to, a lot of it is the background for hip-hop songs. The only difference is you have somebody talking over it. So little things like that. If you're into percussion and drumming, which I love from all different cultures, you can find that in that sort of music. So I don't know, it just appealed to me, very early on. And I think also because a lot of people said they didn't like it, and that made me like it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of how I think I am.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I like some of that music as well. I like dark wave and and bands like Nitrab and Skinny Poppy, things like that.
Absolutely.
And, you ever get into Lou Reed's Metal Machine music? That's an interesting listen.
No, but I'm gonna have to now. Yeah, I didn't think of that.
His guitar feedback for it, like he did a double album. It's kind of like a big, kind of get out a record deal type of album, and it's basically
I know about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. But that's the thing with that kind of music, people interpret all sorts of things and they imagine all sorts of things, and I think that it in some way relates back to me being in this position to essentially give resources, whether it's technical assistance or marketing help or a paycheck or something, to artists of different kinds, and it's sort of it's similar in that I'm saying, well, here, this is for you to do. You know, I'm not putting my interpretation on it. It's kind of this is for you, and it's loose and it's casual and it's organic, but it all works because people are allowed to do what they do well, you know, as opposed to me imposing my lyrics on it, so to speak. So that might be why I like that music. I might have just figured it out.
Great. It's great that the show can help you figure that out.
Yeah.
So, Gina, cycling back to we don't really have a main topic, but let's just circle back. Over your time doing your 50-hat job, what are some of the accomplishments that you're particularly proud of, or that you say, oh, it's not me, it's a group, but as a collective force running these various programs, what are some of the highlights?
I think, well, one that comes to mind right away is with the Artist in Residence program. When I came in, it was a 6-month residency, and when I shortly after I took over, I extended that to a year, which I found made a huge impact on the artists. We also took over a space in one of the buildings that used to be a studio, and we turned it into a gallery. There had been a gallery in the other building, but it wasn't really conducive to exhibits. It didn't have a lot of wall space. It had a lot of windows and things like that. So we outfitted this other room and put up track lighting, and it's a very modest space. But things like that, they may not seem like a huge deal. Well, they can be a huge deal, but they impact the artists. So I guess things like that. Forging this relationship with a local community group called United Block Captains Association, and I'm a huge fan of the woman who runs it. She goes by Miss Alice. She's been in West Philly for a long time. We met at some point, and now this coming summer will be the 4th summer in a row that her program will have a home at the Rotunda. So she runs a 7-week program for youth. They pay nothing, actually. Their parents just pay a small administrative fee, but everything else is covered, partly by city funds and some of it by our budget. And I'm just really proud of the fact that we were able to make it work. So the kids range in age from 7 to 16, actually, and there will be 20, 25, 30 kids every summer. And every day, 5 days a week, they go or they experience all sorts of things. 3 days a week, they go on field trips, and so they go skating and bowling and to museums and all that kind of stuff. And then 2 days a week, they're at the Rotunda all day long. And that's something where I do program for them as opposed to having somebody else do it. So I book artists to come in, and I ask the kids, what do you want to see? What do you want to do? And some of them have returned, year after year, so they could say, oh, well, will you get, Miss Jan back? I want her to teach us percussion again, or will you get that yoga teacher back, or, whatever. But I'm proud of things like that work with a variety of people, work with people who have been doing this stuff for a long time, and then bringing in people who are brand new. So some of these are kids who I think will have a relationship with the venue for a very long time. Right now, I've done a bunch of those things that I think for me are really fulfilling. Right now, actually, I'm working with a high school student, and I've done this a few times. He's 17, he's a junior, and it started out as he has a community service obligation as part of his junior year. He has to go somewhere every week, every Wednesday afternoon. And like I said, I did this with other students in the past, but I decided that rather than having him just come and volunteer at the space and, stacking chairs or something tedious, I would ask him what he wanted to do, and I would give him some options as well, and then I would kind of go with it. And I found out that he loves punk music. He doesn't have a band of his own. He's written tons of songs and put them on YouTube, doesn't have anybody to play them with, and loves going to shows, and isn't really crazy about school right now, doesn't really want to be told what to do, which is, he's 17, I get that. And so I said, well, let's put on a show. Let's first find people to join your band and learn your songs, and you'll be the band leader. And then we're going to put on a show. We're going to figure out other bands you want to book, how we contact them. So basically I'm teaching him everything on how to put on an event, how to promote it, all kinds of technical information. I've shown him essentially how our sound system works, things like that. And just today he had his first rehearsal with his bassist and his guitarist. The drummer is sort of TBD right now. There are a few different drummers who might fill that role.
Drummers usually are.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it was just, I was really proud, this afternoon. I mean, just happened a few hours ago, and I thought, oh man, they're getting along. He's teaching them his songs. They're suggesting songs to him. The guitarist is 15 and the bassist is 45 or something. It's just,
that's awesome.
And we talked about the other bands that he wants to have in his show, and he totally gets the spirit of the Rotunda in that programming should be as inclusive as possible. Punk is traditionally punk has not been as representative of people of color and women as maybe other genres have. So we talked about that. And he actually reached out to 2 female-fronted bands, and they both want to play. And then he went further. We talked about, should this be a fundraiser for something? And he said, well, I want to raise money for something to do with women. And I almost collapsed. I was so excited, and I said, well, how about the Women's Medical Fund? It's like Planned Parenthood, but much smaller, and they need more support, and they're based in Philly. And he was all over it. So I don't know, I guess what I'm saying is just making all of those little connections, connecting those dots, which is something I have to do on a regular basis. I think that's kind of what I'm most excited about and I guess proud of.
Well, it's a great thing.
Yeah, it's interesting when you're saying that, but you are transferring the knowledge in an active teaching manner to this young man. So you gained it through, basically you received it in a manner, and you've condensed it to a single point of, hey, I'm in this space, and this space offers me the capability to take someone like this, or to take a visual artist, or to take all of these other people, and not just pass them the, this is where you put your hands and your fingers on a guitar, but the necessary soup to nuts that most people don't get: the marketing, the sound system, the facility, all of the people-friendly work that if you're, basically some people go to a promoter and they have to get a promoter in because they're all they are is a singer. But if you're basically saying, okay, in order to, you got to know you got to know who to contact in order to get your event marketed. There's so, and believe me, there's so much that I don't know, because here I am with an under marketed produce club. So there's a lot of lessons that you know that I don't know, but you have a long educational period, and it's so awesome to be able to pass someone that knowledge, and you know that it works. It's not like one-stop shopping, and he has it all, right?
Yeah, no, totally. And I mean, truthfully, I think that whenever we can do these kinds of things, we should. It's, for me, it's just, this is just the way things should be. So it's not just, how do I phrase this? So my job has all these aspects to it, but when I took it on, it didn't necessarily have all these aspects. I kind of just kept throwing things into it. And I mean, I know a lot of us do this to ourselves, where we just keep throwing in more, and then at some point you say, well, I need to prioritize. I don't have time for all of this or whatever. But so my job has a little bit of this flexibility, or at least it lends itself to multiple translations, if you will. And I kind of feel like even if it were not my job, whatever resources I have, I want to share. And I've really gotten that. I mean, I guess I was always like that. I certainly got it from my parents, my family. And but I think that it's just something that is in me. It's just kind of the way I am. But also it's just my exposure to so many different things, particularly at the Rotunda. People just raising awareness about things. Just I think about all the things that I've learned working there, not just the sort of the logistics and the event stuff, but just history, things that were not taught in school, things about activists and movers and shakers who, have just, have not been talked about a whole lot. Just the history of our city, and just things like racial relations, and the reason that West Philly is such a cool, diverse place, but still has a lot of tension in many ways, and understanding where Penn plays into that, and where Drexel plays into that, and all that kind of stuff. Thinking about gentrification. I mean, it's all tied into community programming. This is not just art for art's sake. It's not arts and entertainment. It's not just going to the movies. It's a lot more than that. People get a lot deeper, and the Rotunda in particular, I think, and the artist in residence spaces have all become these safe spaces, I think, for people to express themselves and to try to get, try to connect with like-minded people, which is often challenging. But I think it's kind of all of that is what this job and these programs should be. And I mean, it is challenging to keep it going, to be honest. But for now, I think it's going well.
Well, you touched on some interesting thing regarding bringing like-minded people together, and Al and I have talked about this before. It's like you have all these islands, and these islands, there's great things happening. And how do you bring the islands together to where you have bridges to these islands? Because then you really can have a huge movement, and especially in the arts world, when you can bring different islands together, then you can have a huge shift, and everyone's working together, and there's a great synergy happening. And that, to me, that's really the beauty of it is in what you're doing there is how you're creating synergy there. But imagine taking that synergy and combining it to a different thing going on. Like, for example, speaking of West Philly, how could someone like the Ahimsa House, which is an amazing place if you haven't been there.
Sure. I live around the corner.
Perfect. So, and then how does that island connect to what you're doing at the Rotunda? And then how to bring different artists together, and then you have not just cool spaces, then you have like an entire network going on, and it becomes really powerful.
Yeah, and I think we definitely have that to an extent. I mean, speaking about Ahimsa in particular, every year they have a fundraiser at the Rotunda. And,
Great.
We just donate the space to them and say, raise some money. And actually, last year they had it, and one of the, I just have to say this because I think it's funny, one of the raffle prizes was that you could spend a night in the yurt. I don't know if you know they have a yurt. Yeah, you have done. Okay. So I won the night in the yurt, and and I kind of knew I kind of hoped I would, because I put 15 or 20 tickets in the bag for that. So I was really hoping, and I haven't taken advantage of it yet. I was going to do it last month, and I decided that it was too cold, and with going out of town for the holidays and stuff like that, I didn't think it would work. So I think in the spring I'll do it. And it's right around the corner from my house. So if, for some reason I don't want to be there anymore, I'll just, creep out around the corner to my house and sleep in my bed. So it's fine. But yeah, I mean, you're always going to have, some people in silos. You certainly have that at universities. Students have such a heavy course load. Really, really, that's really the case at Penn. I mean, students are incredibly overscheduled, overcommitted. I don't know how they do it. And then, you have all sorts of socializing opportunities for them on campus. So you could definitely be a student who, rarely leaves campus, and you would still feel like you were getting a rich experience. I mean, to an extent. But any student that I work with, I always, if I'm interviewing a Penn student to be an intern, for example, I always ask them, do you get off campus? What's your experience in West Philly? Have you gone to events and blah, blah, blah. And the ones who do usually can't stop talking about it. They're so excited, all the things that they're learning and, all the people they're meeting and everything. And the ones that haven't usually are interested, but they just, for whatever reason haven't done it. And it's unfortunately, most of the ones I'll talk to say that they haven't done it. So then we start talking about why that is and how they can get off campus. And, here's an event you could go to. You don't have to pay. And, it'll be something where you can rub elbows with people who live in the neighborhood, whatever. It depends. Intent is a huge factor. A lot of times people, we might want them to work together, but some people are very skeptical, and deservedly so, a lot of people who've been in West Philly for a long time sometimes say, well, why does that Penn department or that Penn class want to work with my organization? Are they just going to interview us about the history of our organization and our neighborhood and write a paper and then not help us in any concrete way, which happens a lot with academics. So there are all those things. But then also, quite frankly, I mean, it's just people's schedules, people's egos. So when you do get all of those people to work together in some way, I think you're right. It is incredibly powerful, and not even just in the arts. When you have people on the same page in a neighborhood, and this just happened actually in this part of West Philly that I live in right now, called Cedar Park. There was a meeting a few nights ago where neighbors basically shot down a proposal by a developer to build I think it was like a 243 unit apartment building. They asked him, will some of the units be affordable units? We don't really need more luxury apartments here. We want affordability. And he was like, well, that's not really what we do. And they were like, well, we will, we're not with you. We're going to vote against it. And he needed the community's input because there was he would have to change the zoning on the building. So, when you're united in a way, you really can make, affect change like that. Will he find some other way to do it? I don't know, but it's going to be a lot harder. So, yeah.
He's lost his consensus.
Yeah, absolutely. Even Ahimsa is an amazing example. That they were able to buy their the plot next to the house, and now they grow, and they're able to grow food and all the amazing programs that happen out of that building. A lot of people who, either present things there or just participate definitely come to the Rotunda as well. There's a very similar mindset of just sharing and diversity and inclusiveness and all that kind of stuff. So, we're definitely like-minded programs.
So, Gina, I think getting back to sort of an overview of, okay, we started with where you grew up, what your experiences were, sort of gave an overview of what all you do, not not even talking about even 100th of all the things that you do. How do you consciously see that you've been shaped by all these experiences?
I think, well, like I said earlier, I was always sort of drawn to behind-the-scenes things. I was always kind of a person who wanted to pick up for other people, if I felt like they were being mistreated in some way. But really, being, in these programs and meeting all different kinds of people every single day, I think it's been a second education. I really think it's been, like I've gotten my doctorate in Rotunda or something. I don't know. But it's just not only learning, like I mentioned earlier, about, music and arts and things from other places and other people, but just, kind of learning kind of how to work with different kinds of people. And also, this is a very important lesson that I learned, sometimes just, lots of times actually, just shutting up and listening and also, understanding my privilege as someone who works at a university, as a person who is white, and just sort of being in a neighborhood of, many different races and creeds and mindsets and education levels and, just and incomes and things like that, and understanding that I don't know everything or even a fraction of it, and that there are people all around me who know way more than I do about lots of things, and they, I think in many cases, most people would not point to them and say that person is an expert at something. They're just unsung in many ways. So it's really been, I think, I don't know, it's definitely shaped me as an activist. I became vegan at the Rotunda. I met my husband at the Rotunda. It's just a lot of things have made me who I am. And I guess because I've worked such long hours, I guess there was no other way it could happen. Where else was I going to learn things? But yeah, I think really being around people who care a lot, again, whether they're artists or they're activists or they're combinations, having experiences with schools. We've had after-school programs. We have the summer program housed here, like I mentioned earlier, seeing how hard teachers work, seeing how challenged our public schools are. We've had programs where students from a school are supposed to come over and see a play, for example, and we get a call saying it's canceled because the school is on lockdown. So understanding things like that didn't happen to my school when I was growing up. I don't know if I knew anything about that kind of thing, so just sort of being able to see things as much as I can, from other people's perspectives and just hear their stories and be led by other people. It's really made me just want to be a resource for people and want to help however I can. And in many cases, that means not being the leader of something, And also at this point, I think I've been a director of different things for so long that I kind of want people to tell me what to do. I kind of want to show up somewhere, volunteer, be told what they need, and help and just listen. So yeah, it's,
and also,
it's really how it affects.
And also in the case of that young man, you could do the job, but what you want to do is you want to sort of sit in the co-pilot, the third.
Yeah.
You want to sit in the fourth seat. You want to sit in the fourth seat in the jet.
Yeah.
You want to sit in the, you don't want to sit in the pilot or the co-pilot or the first alternate seat. You want to sit in the fourth or the fifth seat in the cockpit, and you're there to supply it if the number one can't do it, and you're there to pass them all of the information up to the point where they know how to do it. And
Yeah.
so basically, the teacher is always beyond the master because they have to know everything else as well as being able to sit in seat number one. But their job is not to create another number one. Their job is actually to get someone so interested in everything else that the person who then becomes under your tutelage a number one self-educates to become another number four.
That's an amazing way of putting it, Alan. That's really great. I don't know if I could have put it that way. That I really appreciate that. And that, I mean, I think that really, that you nailed it. That's so much what it is, you know. And it's funny actually with it, just, you know, talking about this particular project with this high school student. When he first contacted me, he takes guitar lessons from a musician that I know who has performed at the Rotunda many times. And when he first contacted me, I thought, you know, I'd like to help, but I don't think I could do this because, you know, it's a commitment every week where we meet, we plan things, and, you know, now it looks like it's going to be, you know, work even outside of that time period and everything. And I thought, I don't know. And then I thought, well, you know, I think I should take a chance, and especially with a young person, who knows? I mean, luckily he has, you know, great support in his life and everything, but a lot of young people don't. And I didn't know if he did or if he didn't. So I thought, well, I should at least get to know him a little bit and see what we can do, because it could really make a difference. Not like, you know, it's not like I had an inflated sense of myself, like, oh, well, you know, being around me, you know, blah, blah, blah. It was more like just somebody showing him that support and that time and that attention. It might make a difference. And I think that's, you know, if everybody were able to do that with a young person. And I don't have kids, so I like to, you know, I like to sort of work with young people when I can. And it kind of gives me, I don't know, that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling that, you know, when you teach a child to do something and they do it and they're excited about it, like it's I think that's, you know, somewhere in me. So he's given me that opportunity.
It's interesting.
But I couldn't put it like that.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's parents who physically have the child and bring them to a certain age, and then they're sort of hooked into the standard upbringing to however old, if it's post college, if it's just you know to a younger teenage age, and then some of those kids go on to the standard lifestyle, but some of those kids actually find their way to teachers of the stuff not taught in schools.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting to for whatever reason to be one of those teachers.
Yeah.
And to, you know, sort of look at your path, and then to look at my path and say, oh, okay, I didn't know that when I was going through that experience that I was actually taking in all of these lessons that are not taught in schools. But now that you look back, you're like, well, gee, there's all these practical things and all these perspective-changing things that you receive, and you don't look at the world the way most people do. You say, oh my gosh, you know, putting on an event, playing music in an event is really important. You need to have that talent, but that's just the tip of the iceberg if you actually want to get people to show up. Well,
yeah, that's true. I mean, I can't tell you how many times bands have said, well, we have 10,000 likes on our Facebook page, or something like that. So we should get a lot of people to show up. No, no, because those people are not necessarily anywhere near where you're performing. But I mean, actually, and this may seem like I guess it's a tangent, but to touch upon something else, and I think we've mentioned this a few different times. It is difficult to get people, just practically speaking, to come to an event. It's difficult to get people's attention. There's so many things that you could stay home and do, or you could do at other places. Some people don't go out after work, and if they do, they only want to go to sort of big ticket things because they're most likely guaranteed a good time, whereas a lot of the things that happen at the Rotunda, for example, are people who've never performed before, people who've never put on an event. You don't really know what you're going to get sometimes. And we show a lot of film, and so but a lot of people would rather watch Netflix or Hulu at home. And I mean, I get that, especially in winter. I'd like to stay home a lot too if I could, but it's so much richer when you're able to go out, and get together with people. But it is really challenging. When I started putting on events years ago, I would do things like I would take an entire day, like maybe 8 hours or something, and I would just walk from, South Philly through Center City to West Philly, and maybe get on the subway, maybe go to North Philly, maybe Northwest Philly, something like that, and just flyer for events that I was putting on. I would print, thousands. And friends of mine, who were putting on events with me, my friends Trishi and Josh, for example, who put on the first events that I ever was part of organizing, we would do that. We would just print tons of things, go to events, hand out flyers. I would fax, who faxes anymore? But I would fax, flyers to newspapers. I would just open a newspaper, see who was writing about arts and entertainment, for example, and then just fax them, or email them, and it's really different now. You have to be on social media, but it's almost like it's super advanced in that you can use Facebook and Instagram and everything, but then it's also super old school in that in order to actually cut through all of the distractions that people have, you have to do person-to-person kind of promoting. You have to, if you're a band or whatever, you have to get people interested in your music, but you also have to get them interested in you as people. Because people will go to events, like even if your band is terrible, but they like you, they'll go to your event, so I know that from experience. So, there are all different ways to think about it, but it is really tough. And even when people do make it to events, how do you keep them from just staring at their phones? I mean, this is not, that's not a problem we had, 10 years ago. I feel like I sound like my grandfather now, but it's true, so, and I don't know, I mean, there are definitely ways to do it. And people want to be engaged, but there are a lot of things vying for their attention.
Well, going back to what you said, I mean, it's important to make that emotional connection. That's, like you said, they'll if they like you, they'll come to your band because you've made that connection. You've hit them on an emotional, on a human level, and they'll, they respond. The music is important, but it's like you said, it's the person.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's challenging.
So as we move into the second hour, do you want to? There's 3 topics that we'd like to touch on. Do you want to say a few words or a little bit on vision-driven artist workshops?
Oh yeah, definitely. Thank you. I love that series. So I don't know when this was, maybe 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, I don't know. This local musician and activist, Kier, contacted me, and he had performed at the Rotunda, and he coordinates all sorts of amazing efforts in West Philly, and he's involved in Books Through Bars, which provides books to people in prison, and I had volunteered for them a few times, and just all these different things. And he contacted me and said, my partner, Brittany, is a consultant to nonprofits and for-profits, and, we were thinking that there may be some way for her to present some workshops or something at the Rotunda. And I met with her, and I love her. She's incredible. She totally gets it. She understands that, like I said earlier, when you have to shut up, when you have to let other people lead. She understands things from a variety of perspectives, not only as an artist or an arts advocate, but as someone who has worked for a university, getting major grants for them, as somebody who has consulted, like I said, nonprofits and for-profits and helping people to understand how to, budget or whatever. So anyway, so we met and we talked about at first just presenting a few workshops. And then I said, if I can free up a monthly slot at the Rotunda, which is challenging because we have so many events, I would really love to have a monthly workshop series that's free, and we pay guest speakers and vision driven to present these, and to we discussed different topics, and the topics really came from artists and musicians that I deal with on a regular basis, and that she's also dealt with. I really touching upon things that we've talked about earlier in this conversation, things like marketing, grant writing, crowdfunding, real budgets, figuring out what kind of business you want to open. Do you want it to be an LLC or a nonprofit? Because it doesn't always have to be a nonprofit, like a lot of people in my field think. Just all sorts of things like that. Taxes for taxes for artists. So just all of these practical skills. And we really, both of us really believe that these kinds of things should be at a place like the Rotunda, because it's not just about performing and visual arts, but it's also about giving people these resources so they can do, like we said earlier, they can help themselves, they can get to the next level. So Vision Driven, if you go to visiondrivenartists.org, actually you'll see the whole list of workshops that are happening at the Rotunda. It's, for the most part, it's every second Monday. And she's also doing them at Greater Philadelphia Culture Works, which is in Center City, Philly, and is a co-working space and an organization that helps artists and other organizers, event organizers, to really get their businesses in order and come up with business models, or just all sorts of resources. And I believe she's doing at least one, if not multiple, workshops at the Leeway Foundation as well, which is also in Center City, Philly, and that grants or gives grants to women and trans artists working in social change. So I think I blabbed about that for a while, but anyway, the point is that it's a workshop series that really, I think, exemplifies what the Rotunda is, and took cues from people over the years who would say, well, I don't know how to raise money, or I don't know how to promote. I don't know how to get people to come. The workshop that is about getting people to show up is actually called Getting People to Show Up. So a lot of it's just really basic, and what she does is every month she has a different guest speaker or multiple guest speakers who know that stuff. So it's not just one person every month, telling you what they think. It's people, 12, 15, 20 different people a year, giving you tools. And, so I think people should totally check that out. I'm really, really happy that we were able to add that to our roster. It's a fairly new series. And it's right now, she has all the workshops booked through, I think, October, or maybe even past that, probably past that.
What are some of the ones coming up in the next few weeks or months?
In that series? The next one is actually not a second Monday. It's a special one, January 29th, and it's Taxes for Artists. And then February, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it's February 12th is the second Monday. There's grant writing for beginners, if I'm not mistaken. And then I believe March 12th is grant writing intermediate. Those are two very popular, workshops always. With a lot of workshops, whether they're free or not, sometimes it's difficult to figure out what you're supposed to do, or it's super, super formal where, you have to register and you have to provide, certain credentials or, whatever. This is not that way. You don't have to register in advance. You can just show up, which is challenging because sometimes we don't know how many people are coming. But, you just show up and if you sign up for the mailing list, then that's at the door, then you find out about the next ones, and you at times can receive emails about other resources. There's actually a Facebook group that goes along with all of that too that Brittany created, and it's called Vision Driven Philly -resources. And there's another one too that's Vision Driven Philly Presents, I think. That one is just to promote your events. The resources one is to learn about whatever. People post a call for applications for an artist residency or a writer's residency or a grant application that people should know about, or anything, any sort of resource, and it's really, really helpful, and it has several hundred people on it now. I think maybe 1,000, maybe more. Mm-hmm. So it all came from that workshop series.
That's a very, very cool series just for anyone. I happen to be passing through on the Market Frankfurt L, and it happened to be the right time for one of those workshops, and I just stopped in just because, it's sort of one of those, I happen to be in the right place at the right time. I don't know why I'm here. I was extremely uncomfortable. I sat down, and I was like, well, I don't really know why I'm here, but 20 minutes into the presentation, I was like, wow, I know why I'm here. This is really useful information, even for someone who's, you come into the space and you're like, well, I'm not an artist. I don't do, what I do isn't art. And then I walk out of the space saying, I'm totally an artist. It's totally cool. I'm not producing, because what you have in your mind might not be your standard definition of an artist. Your standard definition of an artist is a musician, a sculptor, a painter, something like that. Those are the standard. I'm missing a bunch, but those are the knife, fork, and spoon. But what we do in the art milieu of social change. You're looking at it. You're looking at a society, and you're actually saying, well, this is my canvas. My canvas is actually the way the perspectives that people have. What other perspectives can I share? How does food affect the food, and the quality of food affect people's capability to think, through physiological change. And so you can begin to expand your perspective on what is art and who are you. So a next thing that we wanted to hit on was mentorship with the Bieber Academy.
Oh, right. Well, that's the student that we've been talking about. So I think we got that one. That he goes to Bieber. So,
okay, great.
I think we got that one.
And then basically, I think we hit on working with neighborhood groups. You're talking about you're working with Miss Alice Does that cover what you wanted to say about neighborhood groups?
Yeah, I mean, I think I believe so. Yeah, I think that it's how do I phrase this? So it's interesting being in a place or sort of being employed, I should say, by a university that I think, tries to educate its students in a number of ways. And one thing that I really do like at Penn is that there are a number of classes, people call them ABCS classes. They're academically based community service classes. And they have, it's just a regular class, and then there's some sort of community service aspect to it. And over the years, I've worked with a number of them. And in some cases, like I think, last semester, in some cases they'll come to us or come to me and say, well, in our class we're studying local artists and what makes them tick, and and we want to have an art show, and would some of your artists from the Artist in Residence program want to exhibit or something like that. And I'm always open to those kinds of things, but I think being in the position I'm in that I'm sort of an outsider and an insider at the same time when it comes to the university, because I work at the university, because I work in programs they're technically operated by the university. I feel like it gives me a little bit more leverage than maybe some people in neighborhood groups have or don't have. Not saying they don't have any, but I think that sometimes when you come in and you want to talk to a professor or a department head or somebody like that, some sort of administrator at this big university, for better or worse, if they know that you work at the same place, even if they've never met you and they don't know anything about you, suddenly, they're more open to talking to you. So I kind of try to use that privilege that I have for these other groups. So in other words, rather than them, like for example, with the summer program with Miss Alice and the United Black Captains Association, rather than them applying in some way to various people at Penn or various programs and saying, will you sponsor our summer program or part of it, say, well, this is now a new line item on our budget. She doesn't have to do anything about it. I will pay the artists who are teaching, and that's that. So being able to do that, I think, is huge and is activism in a way, because you're cutting through some of the the red tape or whatever you want to call it that people have to go through to get resources that they need. So, if I can give it, I'll just be like, well, here it is. So I think as much as the university values people in the neighborhood, I think having somebody sort of be the go-between is really beneficial. So I'm kind of honored to be in that position.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had this thought about a half an hour ago, and just hearing what you just said, I'm actually going to say it.
Okay.
You're the University of Penn's designated ambassador to West Philly.
Whoa. Well, that sounds like a big deal. You should tell someone so I get a raise.
Because Penn. I've been associated with Penn since 1963, through my father's postdoctoral fellowship, through his subsequent professorship at the vet school, and back in those days, and probably before you were associated with Penn, when Penn was in conquest mode into West Philly, that was the situation, the emotional unpleasantness between the neighborhoods that were being gobbled up for university city housing, for all of the other things that were quote unquote acquired. There was a lot of bad blood. Now it has, and then there was a period of years, And the university, to my mind, was feeling very guilty about that. And rightly so, they were feeling guilty about that. And they had that political discussion, and the political discussion, okay, on one extreme, oh, we're going to do soup to nuts for West Philly. And then, of course, the money angle comes down. And so what they wound up doing is they wound up doing the Rotunda and also the programs that you run. So, I mean, there's all of this all this history that comes into it that I don't even know half or any of what you know, but I sort of seen the landscape, and so it's a pretty amazing United Nations that you run there, and I thought of this, X number of minutes ago, and you were just saying, "Oh, I'm the go-between." It's like, yeah, I mean, as you say, you've gotten your postgraduate degree in diplomacy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I mean, the thing about the university is, I mean, the area that the university is in, the area of West Philly, is referred to as University City, and that was coined in 1958 by, at the time, I don't remember his name right now, maybe it was Harnwell, I don't know, but the president of the university at the time, along with the University City Science Center, which I guess had a different name, and some others at the time, and Drexel was definitely at the table. They were talking about how to make the area right around their campuses safer, and I put that in quotes, and I know you can't see me, but safer for their students, because there was a Penn student who was murdered off campus in 1958, and there were always people at the university, from what I've read, who were very concerned about, like I mentioned earlier, making good and being a good neighbor and doing some of the things that we do at the Rotunda now. But there were also lots of people who didn't think that was necessary, and, they just wanted to make it safer for their students. And it was almost like they couldn't get it. They didn't fully understand why, relations were so bad, and also like what contributes to a healthy neighborhood. You have to have all sorts of things. You have to have green spaces. You have to have opportunities, schools, sidewalks have to be well lit, all these things. So they thought about all that stuff. And over the years, they put in a whole bunch of things like that. But the one thing that has to always be remembered, I think, is, even though they have the ability to do all these things, how many of these things should they do versus other groups, neighborhood groups, people who, I don't know, are affiliated with, the city council member for our neighborhood, people like that. How much should they be doing, or who has the loudest voice at the table is really what I'm saying. So if Penn is in a position, if they're at a table with a lot of other people, but they're contributing more money to a certain initiative, do they want more say? And so I think that the history has been, just very confusing, multi-faceted, very complicated. And that's why, for me at least, in my job, I try to make things as simple as possible, which of course is challenging, but I try to just sort of cut to what people need. Oh, okay, so you're performing, you want to do this event, and we want to make it free to the public, and this is what your budget is. Like, okay, I think we can cover this, or we can cover a large portion of it. Oh, you don't know how to design a flyer? Hey, guess what? There's this template you can download online, and if you are still confused, I'll look over it for you. Just things like that. And it just makes sense. It's just the way things work and how things remain strong. And so now at the university, you have lots of other people who I think see the value in this kind of thing. When I started working in these programs, I don't think there were as many people who fully understood what we were doing. you're not a student space. It's not a space that just Penn students use, but Penn students are the ones who pay tuition. So, why is the space being used by all sorts of other people? So there were people who would question these things, and I don't feel like they question them so much anymore because they've just seen that it works.
Well, getting into that, do you do a lot of inside the fence PR work?
For individual events?
Selling community awareness of the Rotunda and what the Rotunda does within the Penn fence.
Yeah, I think I do, actually. I'm lucky in that I've been doing this long enough that there are lots of allies or friends or supporters who are around the university who have also been around for a long time. But the minute that somebody leaves that post and a new person comes in, I definitely make an effort to reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we're doing. And, maybe there's a way we can work together, whether it's a new dean of one of the schools and somehow we can get on his very busy schedule, or, we work with the Netter Center for Community Partnerships, for example, and they're really amazing. They support after-school programs and all sorts of community initiatives in West Philly, and so they actually are the ones who pay for our interns, for example. They're paid interns, so they're Penn students who are actually being employed. So all sorts of things like that. I'm always kind of maintaining relationships, and then within the department that employs me, I definitely. I update my boss. I have two bosses. So I update them on a regular basis. I try to do things like not just send them, a document like, hey, this is how many events we had this year, and this is who came, or not who came, but this is how many people who came. I try not to just do that, but I try to schedule a time that they can come through and, for example, come to the gallery that the Artist in Residence runs and see an exhibit, of one of the residents and meet the resident, and just sort of make it more real for them. They're very busy and they can't always come to something on the weekends or something, so I try to kind of, work out, something with their schedules. But, I think it works pretty well. I do find sometimes I have to, sometimes you have to rephrase things depending on who you're talking to. So sometimes I can't simply say, hey, we should really put this artist's work in this vacant storefront because it's cool. Well, that doesn't matter. They don't care it's cool. So, hey, we should really put this artist's work in the windows because this actually is, the work is from a program that they did during the residency with us, and so it's a Penn community outreach piece, and so this is a great way to promote it to the neighborhood that this is what Penn sponsored. Oh, yeah, okay, So,
right.
So I definitely do a lot of that.
Here's where it depends on who you're speaking to. If it's a Penn person, you say, here is how our funds are helping the neighborhood, and that's why we want to put it out there so it's visible, so that X number of people see it, so that we can document it, we can take exterior pictures, we can put it up on social media. This is our. You're so much the public face, and from my historical viewpoint of Penn has had such black eyes in PR with West Philly, and it's never, that period of time will never be repaired.
Sure.
But it's basically how do you go forward and change. Change your operating procedure to learn from the lessons of the past, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, honestly, when I came into this job, I don't even know if I was the best person for it. I think eventually I became good at this, but at the time, honestly, looking back now, I think that, if I would have been one of those people hiring for the job that I have now, I would have really wanted somebody who had a much longer history in the neighborhood. And I'm lucky that they hired me. I'm grateful, and I think I've made good. But that's the thing. I think about that kind of stuff a lot. If I have an opportunity for, like for example, I have a part-time venue manager. His name is Turner, and he's amazing. But I also have fill-in venue managers at times because he can't work every event. I can't work every event. And in thinking about that, I think, well, what do I want from this person? I want them to be invested in the neighborhood. I prefer that they live in West Philly, so like one of our fill-in guys, Angus, for example, lives in West Philly. He's possibly going to be taking on more responsibilities. So I kind of think about that stuff. Like it's very purposeful, who gets to drive the bus. It's kind of like, well, yeah, you get the point.
Right. So I'd like you to just take a moment and think about what we've covered tonight. I mean, I think we're getting toward the end of the show, and I want you to very consciously say, okay, we look through our pseudo script. Is there anything more that you want to cover? I think we've done a really good job, but are there any things that you want to say a few things more about?
I think this has been great, and I feel like this is a really great point to just say, well, certainly for me to say thank you.
David, do you have anything that you want to do that will take about less than 5 minutes, please?
I mean, I just had one question earlier, but I mean, I just addressed it. I was just wondering who's your market? I mean, who comes to your events? I mean, who do you target? I mean, obviously it's different for each event, but I mean, if you had a
it really
kind of
is, yeah, it's really, really different. I think that most
of the time, how's that
it's
challenging the market, I guess, is my other question. Like, what's the challenge?
It's very, very difficult. That's why the person-to-person thing becomes important. And then, it depends on the event. A lot of times people have these built-in audiences, and then I think, well, there's this other organization doing something similar. Let's reach out to them and try to get their audience. So that sort of thing. But yeah, it's just challenging to vie for people's attention and all that sort of thing. There are ways that we just put out the word in just sort of public forums. We have like a weekly ad that we put out in the student newspaper at Penn, for example. So we want students to see what's going on, not just the events produced by students, because they'll hear about those, but the other ones. So that's like something that we try to do, for example, social media, just encouraging people to figure out what it is that they want to say and they want to do, and then we can figure out different ways to promote it, as opposed to just hammering people, knocking people over the head saying, come to my show. Well, why? Why should they come to your show? But it's challenging. Not everybody's on social media. Sometimes we have to hang up flyers in the neighborhood. It really is. It runs the gamut.
Very DIY.
Very. Yeah.
Well,
the whole thing's DIY.
thank you so much for taking time on this night where the Eagles have decided that they're going to the Super Bowl.
I know.
Yeah. So
you hear the noise.
You and I both know what happens to this town when that happens.
Yeah, I know. Oh boy.
The next 2 weeks are going to be weird. So just be totally aware and totally cognizant of being extra careful these next 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's true.
Well,
that's definitely a no-no.
Right.
But the city of Philadelphia put Crisco shortening on all the light posts so that people who are drunk tonight would find them extra challenging to climb. I was like sitting there with a big grin on my face, saying, "That is so classic Philly that it's just it would never happen anywhere else on the face of the earth, but it happened in this city." And you basically just have to embrace the city and say, "I don't understand you. You're a little bit off. You're out of your mind." But it's like it harkens back to a previous famous mayor the name happens to be Frank Rizzo. It's just amazingly interesting, strange behavior. Thank you, Gina.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
for
being here.
Yes, thank you, Gina.
And
thank you.
And if you have messages to deliver, if you want to get PR out, we can do this on another channel. On like, if I'm free, let's sit down and do it and get a YouTube video out. I'll support, this forum. This ability to do this is also for anybody that you see who needs a spot, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep that in mind.
This is basically this sort of I've opened this up to another connection, another network hub to say the same thing. We're here to do a service and to bring people up the ladder and to show them how to get the word out and how to make products and how to be on YouTube. And I mean, I don't know very much being on YouTube. I haven't posted that much, but how to have a presence, how to have a portfolio, how to have a time-wise snapshot of who you were at that moment. This was my piece of artwork. This was my interview about that piece of artwork, and then the progression of that documentation of this was my journey. So important when you get 5 years down the road and you're actually trying to sell yourself or say, look, I really do have an established portfolio of work.
No, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you so much to our listeners, both live and post recording. And would you, Gina, would you give your contact information for the Rotunda out?
Yeah, so if you go to the Rotunda, TheRotunda.org, therotunda.org, and you click on contact, whatever you write will go right to me. So that is the best way to reach me.
Great. Awesome. And David, would you give your contact information out?
Yeah, my Gmail address is dwhitman0906@gmail.com.
And thanks, everybody, for listening. My name is Alan Ritter. I'm the host of An Emerging Forest. I run a small produce distribution club in the southern New Jersey and West Philly, sort of into PA a little bit. And we make use of our great geographical advantage of being in this area with a huge produce terminal market. And, stuff falls off the other end of the conveyor belt. Perfectly awesome, perfectly good, but they have to discount it to get it out the door because that's the type of business that they're in. So if you'd like to get in touch with me about being on this platform, just talking to me about anything, or about the Produce Club, please contact me at ritter_alan88@gmail.com. That's ritter_alan88@gmail.com. Thank you so much to my co-host and guest, and have a great week, and I'll see everybody next week. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks for listening to the Spiritual Unity Radio Network. Join us 7 nights a week for exciting programming covering a variety of expressions of faith. And remember, all manifestations of the divine are equally valid.
At Carrabba's Italian Grill, folks always seem to be saying,
wow!
Especially now, because you can take home our delicious made-from-scratch lasagna, layered pasta with meat sauce, creamy ricotta, and mozzarella cheese, absolutely free.
Homemade lasagna for free? Wow!
Order one of your Carrabba's favorites, Chicken Brian, Chicken Marsala, or Pollo Rosso Maria, and you can take home our made-from-scratch lasagna.
For tomorrow night's dinner, free? Wow!
Hurry into Carrabba's today and get a free homemade lasagna for tomorrow, now through January 29th.
Wow!
Carrabba's, Italian worth talking about.